All right, let's create our register form and we will learn how we can grab the data out of a form and use it in our controller. So we will also learn about controllers. So let's go to auth folder. On the register view, we want to create our form. I'm going to start with a div and add some classes here. So mxauto and max width is screen medium or even small. I also have a class of card that is just some CSS classes. Then within that, I'm going to add a form. The action is going to be empty for now, but the method that we are going to use, of course, is going to be post because we want to register a user through the post method. Then I'm going to make some comments here as we go along. So we will have a div margin bottom 4, and within that div, I will have a label for username. So remember in the previous video, we said we need username, email, and password. So let's do that. And username. So we need an input type text, and the name is going to be username. So these names will be used when we want to grab the data out of this form. And I also have a class of input. This is our first field, and we just want to repeat this process a few more times. So we need one for the email, and I'm going to grab all these names, username, and just change it to email. Now, I'm keeping the type as text here, and I will explain later why. So let's just copy this and paste it 2 more times. I'm going to say password here, but the last field is going to be confirm password. Then I'm going to select all these email texts, change them all to password, change this one to a capital P. The name for this one is password, that is correct. Down here, the label should be confirm password, and the name of this confirm password field is going to be password underscore confirmation. And this is because of a specific rule in Laravel, which I will explain when we get to validations. And I forgot to change the type here. It needs to be password, of course. All right, so this is our form. So let's add a button here. So we just have a submit button with the class btn, and we just want to say register, and I just want to add some more margin to this last input field. So this is margin bottom 4. I just want to change it to 8, so it's kind of consistent. Now let's go to our routes and the web document. So right now we have this get method and we are outputting that register template. We need to create a post method to get the data out of it. So we could code everything here. A better practice is to create a controller, and we are going to continue with a controller. So let's go back to the terminal. If we run that PHP artisan again, under the make section, we should have this make controller right here. So we want to run PHP artisan make controller and then the name of that controller. I want to call it auth controller because I want to have all the functions regarding authentication in one controller. I don't want to have different ones. So let's just press enter. You can see this will create a controller inside app, HTTP, and controllers. So let's go there. So under app HTTP, we have auth controller, which automatically extends the controller class. And we also have this request imported for us. This request is used to grab data out of our form. Let's go back to the web document, and we want to create a route with post method, give it the same URI, so /register, but this time we want to pass the controller as the action. So in order to do this, there are 2 ways. We can pass it as a text or an array. I prefer the array version, and I'll show you the text version in a moment. So we want to say use the auth controller, so it needs to be imported up here, and we want to make sure using this syntax reference the class itself. Then as the second element in this array, we need to pass the name of a function that we want to use. Let's say register for the sake of consistency. Basically, we are saying the method register in our auth controller is going to be in charge of the post requests of this URL. So we need to have this register in our controller. Let's go back there and create the function. So we want to create a public function and we called it register. We don't need to specify the return type, and we just want to die and dump. So this function in Laravel will kill the process and just show us whatever we pass into it. This is a very useful method for debugging. So we just want to die and dump, basically kill the process and just show us this OK whenever we click on the register submit button. And you notice up here when we are outputting that register view, we don't really have any functionality here. We can just change it to a view function like this. Let's do that. We can change this to view and then get rid of this function and keep the name as it is. Now I'm going to put them together, and also we don't need to name our post route because Laravel automatically will resolve the name based on this URI. So this is the way I prefer, using an array where we specify the class and the method, or we can use a string. So if I just add the quotations, VS Code telling me this is the way you can use. So we use the name of the controller and then @ and then register. So we don't need to include this class. But again, I prefer this way, which to me it seems cleaner. All right, let's go back to our form. And for the action of our form, we want to use this route. So we can simply use the route helper function and just pass register route in here. And the method is post and this route is post. So this method will be called from our controller. So we expect to get this die and dump and this OK text. Let's go back to our website and just press register here. We get 419 page expired. This is because our form is missing a CSRF token. So this token, which is applied simply by adding this directive, is in charge of security and it is used against cross-site attacks. So Laravel does all of this functionality behind the scene for us just by providing this CSRF, and this directive is mandatory for all the forms with the method post. So if we go back to our website and inspect our form, you notice we have this hidden input here with the name underscore token. This is done by that CSRF directive. Let's press register now. We get that die and dump. So that means our form is working. So alongside with this die and dump, we also have die and dump and debug, I believe. So if we just go back here and give it a refresh, we get dump, die, and debug, which is a more extensive view of the problem we have or where the error or exception is coming from. All right, so we actually want to see how we can get information out of this form. You notice when we create our controller, this request, which is part of HTTP, was imported for us. So let's see what's in that request. So we can accept it as a parameter here. And I just want to mention, we have multiple requests here. Make sure the one that you are using is from HTTP. All right, so let's create an instance of it and just pass it down here to this die and dump and see what we get. So let's register. So we get all of this information which are available on the request object. We have attribute, request, query, and so on. And if we look under request, we have an array with 5 parameters. This is actually our form. We have our token, which is that CSRF token. We have username, email, password, and confirmation, which are all empty. Or this query, for example, which is the URL query. So if you were submitting a search form, for instance, which is a get method, then it would appear under query. So we would have the search query under this section. So let's actually add some data here. So let's add some dummy information here. And by the way, I changed my browser because Safari was giving me a hard time. So I press register. Under request, we have the parameters. So we have the username, email, and so on. And we could grab all of this information just by chaining the name of this property. So if I wanted to get the username, I can just call that property off the request object in my controller like this. If we resubmit this form, now we get that value out of username. Now that we know how to get the data out of a form, let's start by registering the user. So I'm going to make a comment here and say register user. We want to validate, register, log in, then redirect the user.